What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day for the Sports History for December 22nd, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Friday edition of the podcast. Before we get into today's episode, a quick note from yesterday. We talked about Barbaro and how there is a statue of him at the entrance at Churchill Downs. And I knew there was more horse statues, but I wasn't sure. And this was actually much harder to find than what I had anticipated. It definitely took me longer than what I thought, but I could find two other statues of horses at Churchill's Down. Aristides, who won the first Kentucky Derby back in the 1870s, I believe it was, and Secretariat, who is probably one of the best, if not the best, racehorse of all time. So the fact that Barbaro has a statue at Churchill Downs is a pretty big deal. And as I mentioned, everybody got caught up previously in Smarty Jones mania, but Barbaro probably was the better racehorse. All right, so we're going to kind of go a little out of order today, and let's recap yesterday's question of the day. And I asked, what should the Sixers do at the trade deadline? Should they trade or stand pat? And everybody's pretty split on this. It was 55-45 in favor of making a trade to get the team better. A lot of the people that were against it weren't so much. A lot of the comments were not so much in the line of, oh, you're going to mess up chemistry. It was sort of like Tobias is probably one of the few pieces we have as far as players, and for what he brings to this team, it'd probably be better to keep him. They do have the draft picks. Not that they probably would be very good draft picks, just kind of where the Clippers and how they're doing now. But just something to keep in mind. Thanks, as always, for answering the question of the day. And we'd still have some time to worry about what needs to happen for the Sixers. But it's worth, like I said, starting to think about now as we're seeing what this team is, how it's constructed. And as the previous few years have gone, it seems like it's going to come down to the Sixers, Celtics, and Bucks. And I don't know as constructed now whether they can beat those teams. So as we get closer to February, it's something to keep a look at. But as always, thank you for reaching out. Be sure to call or text your opinions, 267-495-8531 to the voice and text line. Thank you for everyone who has been reaching out on that. So let's go right into the Sixers then, before we go back and do some of the other things we do. Trade deadline was the topic of the day yesterday. They are being linked to OG Anunoby of the Raptors, as well as Donovan Mitchell, Zach LaVine. Everybody who is out there that's reporting on the Sixers and what they're looking for is they're looking for two-way players, which I think with the way Nick Nurse sets things up, and that's why Anunoby is a very interesting sort of player since he played under Nick Nurse. But I know there are reports that Toronto wants to build around him. He does also have an expiring contract, so there's just more than just the trade. There's other pieces that go in that. He's younger, so I wouldn't mind. I think he'd be a good fit into Nick Nurse's system. And it won't be too long until we can see him play. I'll definitely be scouting him and watching a little bit tonight as the Sixers do take on the Raptors and OG Anunoby. But he's one of the guys that have been linked. And like I said, it's an interesting name because of Nick Nurse. Whether or not Toronto is going to be willing to trade him or not, that is they need to figure that out before we can kind of start linking him to the Sixers. But I think it's starting to heat up a little bit. I know in the NBA, usually trades happen prior to the deadline. Think back to Jimmy Butler. It was right after Christmas, I believe. It might even been a little bit sooner than that they were able to make that trade for him. So it is, as the rumors are starting to heat up, it's worth monitoring as we move forward. All right. Quick programming note. We will have a new episode on Christmas. It may be a little bit abbreviated, but we will get the Eagles pick in and break down that Eagles-Giants game on Christmas Day, so don't worry. If I'm being completely open and transparent, I will be recording it on Christmas Eve, so it will happen beforehand, but can't take any days off, whether we're on vacation, holidays, whatever. I have to make sure I'm giving you guys what you want. So just that quick programming note. Housekeeping item, be sure to check out the latest Back to the Future. We did a little history of the career of Herb McGee. Worth checking out when you're sitting around the holiday dinner. Put it on and just start a discussion and dialogue with your family, and maybe they'll spread the word and tell them to like and subscribe and follow Back to the Future with a PH wherever they get their podcast, as well as on YouTube. And then make sure they call the voice and text line 267-495-8531. All right, our 25 days of kindness, and again, kind of keeping with this theme, and I put these before the events of what has been transpiring this week in my life has even happened. But it's an easy thing, or I shouldn't say, it's an easy thing to say. It's a harder thing to do, but life is short. So go make amends with somebody that you may have wronged. Forgive somebody who may have wronged you. I mean, life's way too short to hold grudges. I know there are a lot of people out there that are listening right now that one way or the other, there's forgiveness to be had, amends to be made. What are you waiting for? Just go out and do it. Life is just way too short to hold grudges and just, I mean, you never know what's going to happen, when the next shoe is going to drop. So don't wait, don't waste time and regret it later on. So that's our act of kindness. And again, it's an easy thing in principle. Obviously, I'm not going to sit there and say it's an easy thing to do. I have had my own issues and things that I've eventually come to grips with. Luckily, before it was too late. But again, life's too short. You never know. So go make amends or forgive someone. And that's our act of kindness for today. The Flyers' point streak is snapped. They lost 4-2 to the Predators last night. And it was an interesting interview with John Tortorella because the topic of playoffs came up. And he did say, in his best Jim Moore imitation, this is how I'm imagining him saying it in his head, but this is not how he really said it. But playoffs, don't talk about playoffs. But he did say, he was like, I'm not sure that now's the time. He's like, we don't. There's a lot of season left. We don't know what we are as a team and who we are as a team until the end of January. Then we can start talking playoffs and see. There's a lot of season to play till then, and I think it's a good perspective to have, especially for a young team who was supposed to be in a rebuild that now all of a sudden is into the throes of the playoff race. And he said it doesn't really heat up until the end of January. So I'm taking that as you know what? Just sit back and enjoy it. Hockey is fun again in Philadelphia. And breaking news, literally, well, maybe not breaking, but I woke up to this news and I had a whole thing kind of for the Phillies on my notes planned out. And now it's completely, I'm just going to ad-lib it here. Because they did make an offer for Yamamoto. Unfortunately, it was not accepted. Yamamoto decided to sign with the Dodgers. And, I mean, Dodgers are going to be good. However, one thing to keep in mind, and I know in NBA it's a little bit different, but, I mean, how many times have we seen super teams choke and not really do what they're supposed to do? Everybody's like, oh, the Dodgers are going to win 130 games. And maybe they might. But think back to our 2011 Phillies with the four aces. How did that work out for us? The year before with Holiday and Oswald and Hamels. How did that work out? The year before when we got Cliff Lee and traded for Raul, we signed Raul Ibanez and then Hunter Pence. Doesn't always necessarily mean, because baseball of all the sports is very streaky. So, yes, they're going to be good. I don't think it spells doom for the Phillies yet. However, I think if they were going to spend some money on Yamamoto, I think that then the money is there. If they can make the team better, by absolutely, let's do it. But you look at a team like the Braves and the St. Louis Cardinals, teams that historically, year in, year out, tend to be right there in the race. They build from within in the farm system. So I'd rather see the Phillies concentrate on that. And if you can make a big splash here or there, by all means, let's do it. But no Yamamoto in Philly. However, I think the whole process and the fact that they were one of like a few 4 or 5 teams that were in the mix to sign him, that bodes well moving forward now as other Japanese players. I know there's a certain process for international play, and not just Japanese, but it's kind of open because this Yamamoto is from Japan, and the league's over there. It just puts the Phillies in a different light, I think. So despite the fact they did not get him, I think it is a good thing for them moving forward. But again, watch out for those super teams in baseball. We had a couple of them here in Philly, and didn't really work out for us. The team that ended up winning the championship was more of the homegrown. And even if you go back to 1980, other than Pete Rose, most of those guys were homegrown guys or guys that had played a long time in Philly. So it's not over yet. And I do think starting pitching should be a strength for this team. Wheeler, Nola, Ranger, Tawan Walker, and Christopher Sanchez. Hopefully he continues his progression. But again, I think pitching is one of those things you can never have too much of. So we shall see what happens there. All right, Philly Goat. Do you believe in the Eagles? We'll get into that here in a minute. But if you believe, go buy the Believe shirt. I know it's Phillies colors, but let's go. Let's believe. Get your Believe shirt that you can wear going into the playoff run. Get your Flyers, Sixers, Union, Eagles stuff, whatever. Get it all at Philly Goat. Get yourself set up for the new year. It's still not too late to buy the gift cards for stocking stuffers. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off. You can't use the promo code for gift cards, but buy a gift card for your cousin or your grandmom or whoever to put in the stocking. Buy yourself a shirt there. Take 10% off of the shirt. That's phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right, now the Eagles. And the airing of grievances are still coming in, and that's fine. Get it off your chest. However, it makes it better when you're airing your grievances about the Eagles and not me. I had one person who didn't give a name or leave a name that questioned the state of my sobriety when I was visited by the ghost of Super Bowl past. So I will address those comments real quick here. And I guess, to make no mistake, yes, I agree. You're losing 3 in a row. We only had 6 examples of when they went to the Super Bowl. But let's take a large 10,000-foot view of this. If you're losing 3 in a row, a lot of times the teams with losing streaks like that don't even make the playoffs. So the sample size is a lot smaller of teams that have lost 3 in a row that made the playoffs. And then once you get that pot, teams that had like a realistic shot to make the Super Bowl, like you take out a team like Washington when they went 7-9 and won the division, or like that team from the Seahawks back when the Marshawn Lynch year. So you take that out. The sample size is pretty small of teams that lost 3 in a row that have a legitimate shot. The Eagles certainly fit that category, is what I was saying. And most of my ideas do come to me when I'm in a 0%, like 100% sober. So my state of sobriety when I was visited by the ghost of Super Bowl past was 100%. I was fine. But I do appreciate you airing your grievances against me on the text line. But I'm telling you, you'd feel so much better if you just air your grievances about this team. 267-495-8531. Leave a voicemail. Leave a text message. Whatever you got to do, I'm telling you, you're going to feel better about this team. Keep them coming in. And like I said, it only works to make you feel better if you're grieving about the Eagles, not me. I didn't do anything. I'm just saying, I pointed out 6 times teams have lost 3 in a row and made it to the Super Bowl. 3 times they won. I know there's a lot of teams that did lose 3 in a row, didn't make it. And yes, I was not inebriated by any stretch of the imagination when the ghost of Christmas or Super Bowl past visited me. But again, thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. 267-495-8531. The Eagles did get some good news yesterday. Avonte Maddox, his window of practice, the 21-day window, was open, and he was a full participant in practice yesterday. I don't know if that means he's going to play on Monday, but The fact that everyone thought he was out for the season and now he might be back for the end of the regular season and going into the playoffs, that is a huge upgrade, especially if Darius Slay comes back. All of a sudden now the defense gets a little bit right. You have a little bit, I mean, it's still not great, but that was good news, and I guess we'll know more today. And it's another one of those funky practice weeks because of the holiday and the fact that they're playing on Monday night. But that was a good news. Not necessarily something that was on anybody's radar, so it's great that happened. Cam Jurgens appears on track to play. Zach Cunningham, Landon Dickerson, Devontae Smith, which was a surprise, and Nick Morrow. And Darius Slay all did not practice. Slay probably is out this game. He will be playing by the end of the regular season by all reports. Cunningham and Morrow, hopefully one of them plays, because if not, we might be in trouble at linebacker. Luckily, we're playing the Giants, which, I mean, it's the right time for having them come in. Devontae's concerning. He has a knee injury. Apparently, a couple weeks ago, he was limited in practice and ended up playing. So, again, it's still early in the week, so hopefully we'll know more. But again, luckily it's the Giants, and this is a big week for me. And I know we talk about it all the time, or I talk about it all the time. And for me, the Giants are the biggest rival. Like, I get more amped up. This year, obviously, the Cowboy games meant a lot more, but I would love to ruin the Giants' Christmas and send them back up 95 miserable. It is what it is. They are wearing the black on black uniforms with the green helmets. They wore them against the Giants last game of the season last year, and it worked out well. And they're usually pretty good with the black on black combo. So hopefully that trend continues. Be sure to check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences podcast, wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. Another good episode this week. Very somber tone to the fact that all 4 NFC East teams lost last week. That doesn't really happen all that often. But be sure to check them out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, we are going to go back today, not that far, only to 2019. And on December 22nd, 2019, the Eagles took on the Cowboys in Week 16. The Eagles won that game 17-9 to improve their record to 8-7. They needed that win to stay in the playoff race. Dallas Goedert had a touchdown catch from our old pal Carson Wentz. Miles Sanders ran a touchdown in. Wentz that day threw for 319 yards, Goedert catching 9 for 91. And if you remember, that was the season where Wentz did play every game. And ultimately, I forget whether he got the contract after that season, which I think he did. I don't know, or he got the contract before that season, whatever it was. But that was the year that it's like, oh, he made it through a season healthy, had a pretty solid year, and everything was feeling good. But more on that in a minute. But this win over the Cowboys put the Eagles in first place for the first time all season, and it was an interesting year. It was very injury plagued, up and down. They played the next week. Then they were in a win the division scenario, which they did. At one point though that season they were 5-7, and then they had 4 straight division games. And obviously that's always a tough thing. And I remember the schedule makers, everybody was upset about that, much like the gauntlet this year. But the Eagles did run that gauntlet, won 4-0. One out to win the division. It was Dougie P's second division title as head coach. He would only last one more year as head coach after that. But that was the year they lost to the Seahawks in the playoffs, which after Carson Wentz spent the whole year staying healthy, got knocked out by a cheap shot, I will say. And I don't care what anybody says. I know there's people out here who like the Seahawks who will be denying this, but it was a dirty, cheap shot by a dirty player, Jadeveon Clowney. I can't even say his name right, but whatever. Clowney was a clown on that play and knocked Wentz out of the game and ultimately cost the Eagles that game. And Wentz was never the same after that. But on this day, back in 2019, the Eagles beat the Cowboys 17-9 to move into first place and set themselves up for a win and win the division game the following week against the Giants, which they ended up winning. Carson Wentz was masterful this day, throwing for 300 and some, 319 yards and a touchdown. By far one of the best seasons he had in his career, and then it all fell apart when Jadeveon Clowney cheap shot at him and knocked him out with a concussion in that playoff game. All right, today's Philly Sports Advent Calendar gift of the day. You open up the door, and there's a lot coming out today, and going a little bit different today. And these are great players who you probably forgot played in Philadelphia. And there's a good list of them from all four sports. Juan Bautista, Tim Tebow, Paul Coffey, Terry Crews. Yes, that Terry Crews had a cup of coffee in the NFL with the Eagles. Pedro Martinez, Juan Pierre, Dave Stewart, Fernando Valenzuela, Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, Joe Morgan, Dale Murphy, Kenny Lofton, Jimmy Smith, I forget whether he's in the Hall of Fame or he should be in the Hall of Fame, wide receiver for the Jaguars. I forget the receiver that Rich Kotite chose over Jimmy Smith, and it was laughable. John Madden was in training camp for the Eagles. Danny Amendola, Raheem Mostert, thanks Chip, Art Monk, Mike Ditka, Adam Oates, Tony Amonte, Glenn the Big Dog Robinson, Bob McAdoo, Jeremy Grant of the Trailblazers, Ferguson Jenkins, Ty Cobb, played for the Philadelphia A's, still counts as a Philadelphia team, Yamir Yager, Roy Green, Mark Duper, James Lofton, Antonio Freeman, and Miles Austin. All played, whether it be training camp or regular seasons, with a Philadelphia team. Quite the list. Most of these guys were either at the very end of their career when they weren't good anymore, or at the very beginning of the career and Philadelphia teams gave up on them. But today's Philly Sports Advent Calendar gift to you is the list of players who had pretty good careers, who at one point did play for a Philadelphia team, which leads us to our question of the day. And also, let me know, did I forget anybody that probably should have been on this list that we forgot played in Philadelphia? Let me know that on the voice and text line, 267-495-8531. But today's question of the day, who is your favorite random Philadelphia athlete? I was listening to Johnny Marks and Ike Reese the other day. By the way, good luck to Johnny Marks in his future endeavors as he stepped down. But I know Marks is a Steve Jeltz fan, which is about as random as you can get. So tell me, who's your favorite random Philadelphia athlete? Call, leave a voicemail, send a text message to 267-495-8531. Let me know what you think. Do not forget to continue to air your grievances. And again, the grievances should be against the Eagles or a Philadelphia sports team, not me. But if that makes you feel better, hey, we're here to serve. So if you want to air your grievances at me, go ahead and do it. I just want you to call the text line, 267-495-8531. Leave a voicemail, send a text message, whatever you have to do. Air your grievances. Who's your favorite random Philadelphia athlete? There's a Twitter account out there that randomly I follow that'll throw out random Philadelphia athletes all the time. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Forgot about that guy. So who is your favorite random Philadelphia sports athlete? 267-495-8531 is how you get that to me. We will have more on the Eagles as we get closer to the game, but I still think it's worth noting. We can relax. We can breathe. It's going to be okay. On this day in 2019, they beat the Cowboys 17-9 to move to 8-1 and set themselves up to win the division under Carson and Dougie P. Be sure to make amends or forgive somebody who's done something for you. Again, life is way, way too short to just hold the grudges. So do yourself a favor. This has nothing to do with anybody else but yourself. Just do yourself a favor. Take that weight off your shoulder this holiday season and get it done. Don't forget to call the voice and text line, 267-495-8531. Let me know who your favorite random Philly athlete is. Air your grievances on the Eagles. Make yourself feel so much better going into that Christmas game against the Giants, who are my most hated rival of the Eagles. Go enjoy your Friday. If you're working today, I know I have a half day. I'm looking forward to, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm looking forward to 12:01. But go enjoy your Friday. I'm Jim Montgomery. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.